Thank you folks for clicking on the video. If you'd like to be informed when new videos go live, please hit that subscribe button and don't forget to hit that bell notification icon. Please feel free to like, comment, and share the video with family and friends, as it really does help the channel grow in the current YouTube algorithm structure.
Hello everybody and welcome back to Swamp Dog Games. Today we're going to be looking at a copy of The Forbidden Lands, the any winner of RPG from Free League. This is a Swedish company that's started to really take off in the RPG community with the success of their Forbidden Lands, their Tales from the Loop, their Alien series RPG, their Mutant Year Zero. They just finished a Kickstarter for a new Dragon Host, or something I can't remember. And this will be, though, the review of the Forbidden Lands RPG system. If this looks familiar, it is because recently I did do a Humble Bundle review that included both the Forbidden Lands RPG, some supplements, and the Weissen line of RPG material from Free League. I also have the Twilight 2000 RPG from them as well that I've done a review on, but today we'll be focusing on the actual ins and outs of the Forbidden Lands unboxing. All right, then now to the unboxing. First, opening this bad boy up. Very nice, very thick packaging that this is used in. You don't have to worry about this getting dinged up in transit. This is some pretty thick cardboard that they put in here. Alrighty. First off, you get the nice big Game Master's Guide in this book, or in this box, followed by the Player's Handbook. Very nice booklets in here. Supplement. I think I remember this. And then, come on. There we go. And then your map and stickers. Now, the PDF version that came out in the Humble Bundle I reviewed, this also came with the map and the stickers. If you were to print this off at home, I know of some full-page, clear, transfer-like material that you can use an X-Acto blade to cut out. I think you could do that, but these are already pre-made to the size of the map that you'll be using. I think these are clear background in here, so when you stick them on the map, you only have what is actually shown on the sticker list. The map itself is too big for me to try to show in this entire screen, so let me pull out, yeah, I'm gonna have to just stick to, and this means just showing this one, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, yeah. Is this 2 realms? I think you get 2 realms, or is this the same thing on both sides? Okay, it's the same thing on both sides. This RPG itself sort of goes onto that old school, like, hex crawl style adventure. So when you get this big map, you can fill it with all of these locations and towns that your characters find as they start scattering across here. So with 2 sides of the map, you can have both your clean version, which is just the map itself, maybe for framing, and then you can have the occupied version where you have all the stickers indicating all the locations of interest your players has discovered. Unlike older style hex crawl adventures, however, this one has gone for sort of the more modern route, like the living board games have, where instead of ye olden hex crawl, it had everything pre-keyed, pre-discovered for you for the most part, or the points of interest that you'd find. This one gives you some locations, but doesn't really tell you where any of them are, and it's up for the players to discover actually where they are in this hex map.
even if you don't want to play the Forbidden Lands RPG itself, this hex map is still useful for a dungeon crawl, or excuse me, a hex crawl, or any other RPG adventure setting that you'd like to set within the Forbidden Lands setting. The stickers, as I said, you have the towns and some points of interest. On a couple of them that go over in the books, here that were included in the PDFs. You also have some grave markers for persistence. As your players die, you can mark their graves on the map as well, so you can create little effigies or little mausoleums to their epic questing, and then some townships that you can discover on the map. Now, the major theme for the setting of this RPG, which I don't think I've ever seen any RPG truly connect its rules to the story quite as tightly as Forbidden Lands has. Like, there's some stuff in some other RPGs, like the Dark Eye, when it has character creation, where it has you create, like, the month of the year that your character was born. Okay, little things like that, but you can do without. This is tied very tightly into the setting, insofar as actually a lot of the generating encounters rely, for the most part, that you're engaging in this setting. The Forbidden Land setting. The idea is that you're in an area that's been highly contentious between the different races, the humans, the dwarves, the elves, the halflings, whatever, and suddenly this thing called the Red Mist came down from the mountains, and essentially every night the Red Mist would appear and would effectively murder everyone that was out past whatever time frame the evening zone was. So it became like next to impossible to try to traverse the Forbidden Lands because you couldn't risk being caught away from your township, because you would likely be murdered in the fog or the Red Mist. So though this area used to be highly populated, highly engaged, have all kind of geopolitical machinations among the realm, that Red Mist sort of isolated everyone. But now, just as mysteriously as that Red Mist came 300 years ago, now it's gone, kind of. It does pop up in some encounters, but for the most part, it's no longer a persistent, immediate daily threat, and it's now allowed these previously isolated groups to to adventure forth once again, and to try to see what the land has turned into since the mist took hold. It's a nice setting system that you can provide. Well, 300 years ago, we all knew that this was a vast, thriving empire, and it was filled with all kinds of people, but now, because the mist has come in, we're now having to rediscover what was once a civilized land. Aesthetic allows your players to be sort of that expectation of, oh, there's going to be all kinds of cool things that we can find here because we knew they existed prior to our time, but the game master can then bring them into the setting without having to fill in a lot of backstory, because they only ever knew their little small township in here, and are having to rediscover the broader realm of the Forbidden Lands itself. The map, if you bought the Humble Bundle, is an extremely high-res one, well worth it, and is useful outside of this setting. Getting into the booklets as a size comparison, I'm not sure what size this is. This is definitely bigger than a US Digest. To give an example, here's an A5, my Old School Essentials Advanced Fantasy, and here's a standard US 8.5 by 11. As you can see, it's about inch and a half to about 2 inches short on that side, and then bigger than the A5. So it's a not weird kind of in between. I'm not sure what the official paper size is. It's definitely not an A5 because it's too big for that, and the A4 would only be slightly offset to the US 8.5 by 11 letter size. So I'm not sure what medium ground this fits in, but it's a nice little digest tome. It doesn't feel as bulky as like carrying around a ton of D&D books, but it is a weird size.
It does have this sort of faux leather looking stuff over the cardboard. Does feel very nice as a booklet. In here you do have the map of the Forbidden Lands. Here's a nicer macro viewpoint. This is what the map itself actually fully expands into. This is the player's guide, right? Yep. I think this is stitched binding. Looking at the grouping, let me try to find a midpoint in one of the groupings, because with everything else being so high quality, yep, this is stitch binding. Nice stitch binding. It's not going to lay flat by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a very high quality, nice book. When I think this was about $50, this RPG box, it definitely, a big chunk of that money goes into the presentation of the two core rule books. Now, the main RPG system that this uses is what most of Free League's RPGs are. My previous experience is with the Twilight 2000 RPG, the 4th edition from Free League. That one uses a slightly different system, but I believe this is what the rest of them use. It's a dice pool system similar to what you're used to finding in games like Shadowrun. For example, in here, you would take your attributes. Here you only have the 4, your strength, your agility, your wits, and your empathy. You would then add it to your individual skills. That gives you the total number of d6s you'd roll. You'd roll that, and then every 6, hopefully you have at least 1 6 to be a success, and then for every 6 after that, that counts as an additional level of success on your check roll. As this focuses on that sort of older style gameplay of RPGs, you can tell in the artwork it definitely has that old, like, first and AD&D style pen artwork aesthetic that it's going for in the design of its character sheet. Also, a lot of that artwork in here fits that same aesthetic. Most of the classes are going to be variations of what you're already used to if you've played an OSR or old school D&D style game. It does have race separated from class. Because of how they do it here, you really need to have that separation. It's most of your standard fantasy races, though they do a couple weird, unique things in here that's well worth it. In the case of the elves, I believe they have... It's similar to, like, Warhammer 40,000, where they have a jewel that keeps their soul in their chest, and that's what keeps them young. The halflings, however, get a little bit crazy in here when you actually find out they're actually related to... Or was it halflings? I think it was halflings related to goblins. That one was a little bit creepy, how that worked. Your professions and the special abilities you get. With the much simpler die rolling mechanics, there's not as many special abilities that you get with this system. But it does have the rules for generating your character from scratch, how you create the player character sheet. In here, encumbrance is going to be a lot more of an issue because it is also very resource intensive. This game, you need to actually track your consumables, your food, your ammunition count, your torches, your water. It's not grim dark or survival horror, but you do really need to check your resources because they intentionally make that a limiting factor to how far out you can go in your adventuring in the system. So it is not just an optional, it really is part of the system for your resource management to determine how extensive you can go out into the field. Now, some things might increase, like the type of die that you get to roll, but most die it's a d6. Sometimes you might get to, because of a special ability or a special something, allows you to roll a d8 or a d12. The going over all of the abilities, talents, sort of like feats that you get. If you're familiar with how feats work in Dungeons and Dragons. Combat in this system, you don't have hit die the same way you do with Dungeons and Dragons. Here, your health is actually determined by your attribute. So in combat, you do have to be careful. It's that limiting factor that as you get hit and you suffer damage, it actually makes it harder for you to retaliate in combat. So it does have that danger factor that like OSR games tend to do. Though they do it through lower hit die, here it's managed. You're going to have smaller combat encounters compared to like OSR games, but because your attributes act also double as your life points as well, you have to be really careful because you can quickly get into a death spiral where you're just taking damage and then it limits your ability to retaliate, and you can hit a point of critical mass where you can very quickly get in the danger of being like really screwed in a combat encounter. So you do have to be very careful when engaging in combat that way. Most weapons in this game don't roll for damage the same way you're used to with D&D. Here it tends to be set damage values for your attacks. Because again, they're being applied directly to your attributes themselves. You can suffer critical damage in certain cases with weapon attacks, and this one will determine if then the attack is lethal, in which case you have to be careful of like insta-dying if you don't properly treat yourself from these severe conditions, or you could suffer significant penalties, or even in here sometimes permanent penalties, depending upon the type of damage that you take on a critical injuries table in the system. Like in here, you can have a severed foot, which will impact your action economy. Here, you either have one slow action or two fast actions per turn. So, as it says here in the critical injuries table, your run becomes a slow action, so that permanently decreases you from being able to take two run actions in a turn to now only being able to take one run action in a turn. So that can have dangerous consequences in combat later. Your standard weapons charts, again, most of them are set damage values. I think most of the time it's like 1 and 2. There's a couple rare ones, like really powerful heavy hitters, that will do like 3 damage. And then you also have that nice pen art of actually what all of the weapons look like, how damage and critical injuries occur, how you can have then also different other damages that occur, poison, falling, drowning, fear effects that can occur to your characters as well, different diseases that can apply to your character. The magic system in here is, from what I have seen, and I personally agree with from most other reviews of the Forbidden Lands, one of the biggest contentious moments in the design of this RPG, just because even though a lot of people like this RPG, myself included, it does seem to have a very limiting impact on spell casting or your use of spells, because unlike combat where you just hack and slash away, in Magic, every time you roll for a spell, you can run the risk of insta-dying. In your general combat economy, let's say you fail to strike it, you can put a monster, you could push your luck, and if you fail pushing your luck, then suffer a negative consequence. I believe that's something they should have messed with Magic, because here, if you fail just a standard Magic test, you run the risk of like actually blowing up your wizard. I wouldn't mind it so much if it was if you're pushing your magic abilities, like you fail your magic roll, therefore the magic missile doesn't go off, then your wizard pushes his skill and then the magic missile blows up in his face. That would be one thing. But here the standard state is that you run the risk of getting your wizard killed just casting standard magic. there is a way that you can sort of downgrade the magic that you're being cast. I think that really needed to be your baseline, that the magic's base setting is slightly powered down but not likely to blow up in your face, not guaranteed to have a chance to blow up in your face. And then if you like really pushed your luck, then you could run the risk of it blowing up in your face. It's the magic system needs a little bit of an overhaul that hopefully either will get fixed or got fixed in subsequent editions of this book. I'm going off of the older PDF that I have from Humble Bundle. But you do have some basic magic abilities in here. It does go into about journeys for your characters, how the day system works for traveling in here, for your resource management, because in here you do need to keep watch, because if you don't, then that increases the likelihood of mishaps or encounters. Your foraging, so you can keep your players characters actually alive in between their hometown, sort of where they explore off to. There's a nice throwback to old style OSR games where the goal of the characters is to establish and then upkeep a stronghold. Here, it's not like some other ones, including basic fantasy, where it's you just have your stronghold and it exists. Here, there's upkeep that you have to manage, that payroll of your lackeys that you have to manage. If you don't want to pay your lackeys, then they can decide to just scanter off in the middle of the night, and then you run the risk of things happening to your stronghold while you're gone, such as like slavers just coming and taking it over, or bandits just like, we're going to take it over for ourselves, and screw the players when they come back. Your standard adventuring gear, it's mostly the same economy you're used to, of your gold, silver, and copper pieces. It does have a trade good economy, similar to how you have to do resource management for adventuring, where you're keeping your characters fed. Yeah. This does also have a crafting system where you can craft ammunition for your weapons. There is a crafting system for more advanced weapons and equipment, or crafting the different expansions onto your stronghold that you can do. You don't just have to buy them in gold. You can actually, through adventuring, obtain enough resources to craft your way. It's good, though, that the core booklet or the player's handbook, for the most part, does not have much of the adventure setting in it. It is useful. You could set up, use the Forbidden Lands player guide in a non-Forbidden Lands RPG. It's going to be much tougher to convert a OSR or D&D style adventure into something for the Forbidden Lands RPG. There might be a conversion guide online from some fans, but I don't remember coming across it in my research for this video. You do have to be careful with the conversion, because this is so significantly different. But you could easily use most other settings, I think, outside of the monsters, in a Forbidden Lands RPG. That covers everything you need for the player in the Game Master's Guidebook. This RPG itself, it does put a lot of onus on the players, so this probably would go back more to like the old school thinking of the Game Master as more of a referee, as its hex crawl design and adventuring design, it's really player driven to go out there. Now you as the GM need to create like points of interest. There are some that are included in this book that are available. It does include encounters that you can do. You can use a standard deck of 52 to handle hex crawling, just random encounters. This does include the more information about how the actual setting works, how the internal religion works. Here it's more of a monotheistic religion, but everyone sort of has their own view on how the one deity actually functions. I'm trying to think of a real world equivalent that wouldn't start a religious war in the comments, but that's sort of like the issue that you have here, where it's like everybody believes in technically the same deity, just their own different version of how that deity functions. You do also have your bestiary in here as well, a little bit more explanations about how the different races work in here. Your dwarves, your trolls, your orcs, your Isar, or the different clans that are available in this setting. Oh yeah, here's your bestiary. It does sort of come like the basic idea of an NPC AI system. Not really, though. When you attack, you can either just have the game master unilaterally decide the monster will do X attack. However, it does include a random chart that allows you to just roll a d6, and I would recommend that instead of just randomly choosing one of the 6 attacks that it actually does. I wish, though, in this system it would do a 2d6 system with a bell curve style attack, so you would actually have more of an effectively a monster AI system where you would have at 7 its most common attacks, and then as you start branching further away from 7, it's less common but maybe more powerful attack options. But it does allow the game master to technically automate the attacks that the monsters in here will actually get into. Some of them are unique to the setting, as this one is. As this one is born of the um, blood fog that goes through, or the red mist that comes through this bloodling. This is actually what will kill you in the fog. More so than the fog itself. It actually has creatures in it that will try to murder you. It does have some nice random tables for handling. As I said, that old pen art, this is probably one of my favorite examples of the artwork in the system, like here, the Death Knight. But otherwise very reasonably inspired by monsters that you're probably familiar with. I'm sure with a more Scandinavian look, whatever their traditional folktale fantasy inspirations are probably applied to both the artistic representation and how they handle in here. We get through. You do have artifacts, which are sort of your magical items, the sort of treasures that you can get in the system. It does have a nice little selection of different treasures that you can get a description of how they work and what they do. The encounter system, this is closer to where you really get that old school D&D feel of and OSR through the random encounter generation table that you, through the different points of the day, you roll your encounter likelihood. It You can also do it as just a deck of 52, I believe. Instead, the I know the I remember that it was specifically set up for a deck of 52 for the what do you call it? The Twilight 2000 RPG. Here it looks like it only goes up to 43. Um, that's kind of an issue with some of these tables. It looks like it has an expansive amount of options, but then when you look at it, it actually doesn't have as many as you think. Like here, it's a 66 system that only goes up to like 43 encounters that you can have, because encounters 11 through 36 are all just nothing happens that day. But as we go through here, there are some nice, unique encounters in here that, again, are part of the setting, particularly when you get into, like, the red mist, which is the main conceit about here, that the mist comes down, and if your players don't scramble their way out of it, they have to fight the blood monster that will probably murder your low-level characters. As you get higher, you can probably just fight your way through it. You do have rules for creating towns, and here they call them adventure sites. So since you're using the hex crawl style adventure design, your players are sort of wandering around the countryside, and you, as the game master, just insert points of interest, or as they call them in this game, adventure sites, for your characters to actually interact with. These are going to be where you actually have the long term encounters, and it does have tables for rolling those up. It does also have later in here some pre designed ones as well, a couple of those. But here, as you can see, all the tables for um, creating oddities. Some of this, if you're familiar with Ben Milton's Knave and Maze Rats, um, or at least I'm on his Patreon, so I got the Knave second edition, and I think that includes a lot of what Maze Rats did into the core Knave narrative. That sort of random table generation for adventures. There's a lot of this that reminds me of Knave 2.0 uh, draft version of adventure design in here as far as the random tables go. I thought the township adventures were a little bit closer. Okay, here's the an example of the township, the hollows. This is one where just like the town has grown up, used to like the built on top of an Indian burial ground, and now is haunted in the as all the spirits come rising back up at night, and the township has just gotten used to that. Uh, this is a nice example of the full page, but also the downside to having double-sided artwork in here. That you do have the seam going down the middle, and you can see where it doesn't quite line up 100% perfectly. The two sides, and there's a little bit of a gap caused because of the binding issue. It's not bad. It's a nice full-sized map, but I wish you had digital handouts when you buy the PDF version. I take that back. You could actually just print off page A and page B and then probably stitch them together just fine. The for handout for players. The township map is a lot better than the encounter map, because in the township, just knowing the relative locations in here of where the different points of interest are, it's very easy to see their relationship with each other. You don't need to see each individual room or inside each house for the game master to create a story for it. But in the broader adventure location that they give you here, Weatherstone map, this one just gives you, hey, this is what it looks like on the outside. Here's where the rooms are, the points of interest. And because there's no interconnection, the game master is going to have to fill in a lot, and I mean a lot of gaps of how players get from point A to point B, and the interrelationship of rooms, particularly if you like playing with maps. The game master is going to require a lot of work stitching this actually together in a mappable form for players to use. Again, if they like that. If you're just going to be doing a point crawl adventure style, this works perfectly fine. But I and my group tend to prefer the mapped adventure ways where you actually have to map out the building. This point crawl dungeon design would not work for us. Some more events and some more locations in here that you can go to. Again, the Game Master's Guide is mostly about world building, and it does have some handouts that you can give the players, but is primarily focused on world building, some treasures, and the bestiary itself. The Legends and Adventures Handbook, I'm not sure why this is a separate publication. I feel like this should have been included in the core rules. Now, I don't know printing, the back end of publishing. I don't know why this couldn't be put into the core rule books, as this goes into more in depth about character creation, why this was separate. I don't know if maybe just these two came out first, and then this is a subsequent edition, as it says on the back,
This one was printed in 2022. I believe the original came out in 2018, and therefore this was just an add-on supplement to increase the value. I'm not sure why it is in the core rulebooks, but it does feel like it should have been there, and so it's a little bit of a letdown that this additional legend and character creation material and monster generator is not in the core rulebooks, especially the monster generator. If you want to create your own monsters for this and not just use the short bestiary that's included in here, this really should have been in that rulebook. Overall, though, a really nice RPG system. Now, the rating of this is where it gets a little bit tough. I didn't go into a couple of my complaints. I will do that now. I like the setting overall. I'm not sure. Some of the world building that goes in here about the history, could take it or leave it. The presentation of the world history, depending upon if you like their particular version, I don't feel like you really need to go into it, since the whole point of this setting is that the mist has come through and has isolated the world from each other. You don't really need to know what happened beyond your village. Just let the game master create it all, especially since this takes such a macro viewpoint of everything. I mean, it could be useful as some history, but the Red Mist forward is where it's the most interesting as a setting. Pre-Red Mist, I don't know you really necessarily need to go into it as in-depth as they do in the Game Master's Guide. It seems kind of pointless. Their also presentation of it isn't my favorite, but the Red Mist going forward is a really great conceit for adventuring. I grew up watching Stargate SG-1. I sort of see that same idea here. Imagine the version of Earth is cut off from the greater Stargate network, and so it gets to evolve on its own, separate from the rest of the universe, which was controlled by the Goa'uld. And therefore, Earth, when it rediscovers Stargate technology, is having to rediscover the broader galaxy and how it's changed without Earth's involvement. And Earth is now sort of in danger of all these alien forces that didn't know it even existed until it rejoined the Stargate network. You can sort of get that sort of old-style adventuring out of here because of the Red Mist. All of these societies that were once interconnected were just, like, shattered. And now the broken world is now trying to reunite, and the players don't need any of that history. They just know their individual town's history and go forth from there as they discover epic new lands. And though you do run the risk of, like SG-1 that turned into Monster of the Week, I feel the use of the Red Mist was a very good excuse to engage in Monster of the Week storytelling in the Forbidden Lands. Some of the history it could have dealt without. As far as the content goes, everything you need to play is here. It's got the setting, it's got the rules, it's got everything the player needs. I feel like, though, if you're used to one of the old Dungeons & Dragons starter boxes, where it just gave you enough to get through, like, the first 5 to 10 levels, maybe, I forget which starter box in particular, or the Pathfinder starter box, that one I'm more familiar with. That starter box, it had some pawns, it had some basic rules for your for your players, the NPCs. It was just enough content to get you through level 1. This is more content than what comes in the Pathfinder starter box, at least as far as adventuring, because with the hex crawl system and the adventure design tables, you can create adventures longer. But as terms of just the amount of material that you get between the artifacts, between the adventuring gear, I don't know, it could be I'm just used to being spoiled by what's in a in a D&D compatible or OGL compatible RPG, that you just have all of this content that you could survive for years just off the 2 booklets, or the 3, the player's guide, the handbook, the game master's guide, and the bestiary. Here you have everything. You have
the story, the equipment, the monsters, and everything, but the amount of content feels very small. Again, could I be just have been spoiled by Dungeons and Dragons that just gave you so much in the 3 books that you could venture for years without ever having to buy another book? Possibly. But here it feels like you very quickly will need to get that extra material that's out there. Now, this does have a pretty strong fan community. There is the Free League workshop that you can join, that Free does on DriveThruRPG. Through that system, you can submit your material to Free League and DriveThru, and you can sell material that's designed to support this. They do give you Word document templates and some templated artwork that you can use to create your fan material for these books. But it feels like the lack of material in here is going to very quickly push you into needing those external supplements that are on DriveThru from the community or from Free League directly in some of their campaign materials specifically set for the Forbidden Lands. I can't quite get that nagging feeling off of my system that this is like the Apple of RPGs, that it gets you into the ecosystem with a really cool, nice, well-designed product, but then it really grabs you with that App Store purchase. I can't shake the feeling. I might be just too harsh on Free League, but that's compared to either because just that Twilight 2000 was so new when I read it and my first time jumping into that, and therefore I didn't have it then, or this just felt like more material in Twilight 2000 versus this. It just nags me at the back of my mind that Free League is becoming like the Apple and to Wizards Microsoft. But at least so far, they've been better than Apple is in the real world comparatively. But I can't help strike that App Store feeling with how they run their workshop. But overall, it's a nice RPG. If this is your first entry point into RPGs, it's a simple mechanical RPG that is not flashy. It's not going to bog you down with lots of crap. There's very few things that you have to remember. It's a good entry point to people who've never played an RPG before. From a cost perspective, I mean, Basic Fantasy is free, but because they want to support free open role playing. This you got to pay about $50 to jump into, but it's not a bad deal, honestly though. However, if you want to buy and jump into this RPG, I highly recommend you wait for another Humble Bundle to come out. If you buy this in PDF format through a Humble Bundle, I think the last one I paid $18. There was the Game Master and Player's Handbook in PDF form. There was the map. There was the Tower of Quetzal, which also had Ben Milton as a contributing author on, as well as some other adventures, as well as the Vaesen RPG from them as well. I think for $18 to $20 as part of a Humble Bundle, this is an 18. You really should buy it. You really should experience the RPG setting if you can buy it in the Humble Bundle before you go out and risk your hard-earned money on purchasing the physical edition. Now, I enjoyed reading through it, even with the feeling that this is like a lower fancy book-wise, but lower-end content-wise beginner's box. I still wanted to get the physical copy to actually review here. I think, though, that when it comes to the physical edition, this is going to be about a 15. You really should experience this if you can through the PDF first. And then, if you're a fan of it, if you want to play more of it, then by all means get the hard physical copy of it to play with your players. I would not recommend, though, this as your jumping off point, the physical edition, if you can avoid it. The Humble Bundle is a much stronger route to go and get your feet wet for easy access price and confirm whether or not this is an RPG for you. 15, again, really high quality, really good, and it's the high quality of the print version that really drives this up to a 15. But you really should check this out first before you buy the print version if you can. But it is a very well supported fan community behind it, so it's not like some RPGs where are heartbreakers, where you just get the main author creating their core book and then maybe one or two supplements. Here you're going to find fan content for a while. It is still supported by Free League on drive-thru. You can get additional material there. Free League Workshop is still pumping out material for here, so it's still going to provide you plenty of content moving forward. And it's a really nice, simple RPG system that I sort of call it my coffee table RPG. It's not going to be for my hardcore gamers that love the crunchier rules. Well, not necessarily crunchier, but like the more hardcore rule set, more defined rule environment that an OSR game might provide. This is much faster and looser and is much more reliant on the game master being a referee to sort of like be there to smooth over players' interactions with the world and to create adventures for the world rather than being a hardcore participant like a OSR game might be. But that is my review of the Forbidden Lands RPG. What are your thoughts on it? Think that I should have rated it higher, lower? You thought the print edition should be added to every gamer's collection? What are your thoughts in the comments down below? If you'd like to help support the channel, please like, comment, and subscribe. That way I get the video out to more people. Right now I'm more in this for the subs than the YouTube rev, so please help spread the word of the channel out there. And I'll see y'all next time. And may all your rolls... all your rolls be almost criticals. See you next time.